Is there an end to the line of questions that try to uncover the true nature of reality? So, energy is the capacity to change reality on the smallest scale. If something is completely static, there are no variants, it is at a zero energy state. But what is it that energy is changing? And if energy is stored in structures, are these structures inherent to reality and sort of carve grooves that energy fits into naturally with the process of evolution? Or are their structures a result of, some other thing? Basically, what I'm saying is that the whole entire universe and everything that's ever happened could be physics, could be a single energy with nothing to stop it from developing its own pattern. So, just like a pencil makes a whole drawing with lines, and energy makes a whole universe with parameters that increase in number as the system complicates. So if you have 3 dials, one dial affects volume, one dial affects pitch, and the other dial affects pulse, what you have is something that can get louder or quieter, something that can go higher in pitch and lower in pitch, and then you've got the frequency at which it's pulsating. The sounds that you can make with these 3 individual dials are logarithmically higher in number than the single sounds that you would be able to make with either pitch or volume or pulse. And so when you get to these higher complications of patterning, you get different sets of laws that govern that. And a good way to do this is to have points, a bunch of points that look like something. And then you start adjusting how close or far away those points are by pushing an object into this grid of points and create the depth. Because if you look at each individual point, the only parameter is whether or not it's far away or close to you. And so based on that, you can do a topographical representation of 3-dimensional objects. So just like quantum physics describes things that are happening within, atoms and stuff, the parameters that we have our dials set to affect interact with each other in the manifestations of the details of the pattern. So if you look though at the spectrum of complexity and recognizability of patterns, you go from a line to your first recognizable shape, to some more scrambling, to a higher dimensional shape of those first intricacies interacting with each other based on the continued input of whatever energy is happening. And they're harmonics. They're harmonics. So, geometry and math are just tools that we can use to try to answer the original question, which I'll repeat, was that are the molecules and the structures that inherently exist in the universe, in the things we see in the universe, that is, are they more inherent than that and actually the fundamental patterns that shape the universe into being what it is? That is my question. And the question that I follow that up with is, will we ever have a question that will answer everything? You know what I mean? Patterns are structurally integral for the existence of energy. And they're aesthetic. So if infinity exists, we happen to be living right now, yet infinite versions of ourselves would have to also exist, just because of the Shakespearean monkey hypothesis. 10,000 of them with typewriters, eventually out of the randomness comes Shakespeare. And I think what it really boils down to is that the patterns that are there are just displays of what the universe actually is at its core. And you see them everywhere. You see them in the way that water in the sink circles the drain. You see them on the patterns on animals, furs and stuff. And what I believe is that the universe is kind of, in geometrical terms, a sort of infinitely dimensional hypershape that is changing its phase constantly. And whatever phase it's in determines how things are going to go. So what do? We use our brains that are vibrating and having electromagnetic interactions and, transducing molecules to a quantum level with digestion and stuff. And the whole person and the space around that person is being affected just as much as the person themselves in the vibrational thumbprint that you're putting off. That's going to go out into your surroundings. And the point is that it goes all the way to its final focal point and then comes back to you like you're casting a net, like a radar or a sonar, and then it comes back to you, and when it does, you have the complete picture. So basically, human beings have outward influence, and it's not just a one-way system, and reality is kind of pliable in the sense that the way that you influence it is going to determine the way that it responds to your influence. And that's just cause and effect. That's a simple principle. But it shows that there's room for the testing of new paradigms that are going to advance the state of the species. It's somewhere between automatic kinetic energy set in motion, maybe forming some grand pattern with patterns in between it as its individual pieces coalesce. Emergent in all areas at once until it forms, like it congeals into something, palpable. And God, you know what I mean? It fluctuates between the spiritual nature of free will and the actual observation of us that the universe does and acknowledges with its response to our, thinking and stuff. And just a bunch of particles that function on a set of laws that have randomly created this universe by existing with their tendencies in space,